great of you to allow me this opportunity to just talk to you briefly about an exhibition we've got coming up in March. So last year you may have seen there was a Kate Shepherd sculpture created for Women's Refuge in Wellington, created for by Propeller Studios in Wellington, and it was intended to go into Parliament. The sculpture is made of 351 glass-edged acrylic plates and is lit by 1,000 LED lights and stands over 2 metres tall. And Parliament had a bit of a U-turn and they decided they were too busy and they didn't have enough space for the sculpture. And given that Kate Shepherd had arrived to Littleton in 1869 on the Toka, we thought, well, we would love to have her. And so we've arranged for this sculpture to arrive to Littleton for International Women's Day on March 8th. So we're going to have an opening. The Mayor's agreed to open the exhibition for us, which is wonderful. We're having a kōwhiri with Rahaki. It will be open to the public at 11 o'clock on the 8th, and the curators talk, and we'll have a walking tour of Littleton in 1869. The first part of the exhibition is going to be with the Littleton Museum, and they're curating information around women's suffrage, the original suffrage and suffrage centenary celebrations. And then in April we've got artist Julia Holden, who's painted a whole lot of portraits of women from Kate Shepherd's day until the present, influential harbour basin women who have broken through that glass ceiling which is said to hold women and minorities down in their careers. The exhibition will finish on Mother's Day on May the 10th, so it gives you a good 9 weeks to come along and view it, and perhaps we organise a private viewing for your group as well. Yes, Littleton, Tin Palace Littleton on Facebook and website as well.
What street is it?
It's on Oxford Street, so it's just down from the main street.
So do you have to buy tickets?
No, we're free entry.
So that's a wonderful heads up for us, isn't it? Thank you, Holly. Now, we're going into now the talk which Dave Lucas is going to give us, the title of which is Our Garden City, Its Future. And we know that Di is really going to challenge us with that topic. She's the director of Di Lucas Associates, or Lucas Associates, and she's a registered landscape architect. Many of you will already know that because she has been working for many years with communities to plan and design process for creative and sustainable solutions. And her holistic skills and experience have been built up over many years, and she is appreciated for her landscape assessments, both on a big scale and also a small scale. She understands intimately about landscape ecology and restoration, and has spent years consulting with various communities about heritage values, sustainable resource management, and creative problem solving. Her frameworks are quite diverse. The projects that she does can be big regions and districts and towns, helping with the planning development or restoration of specific sites, working for community, industry, landowners, iwi, government agencies. And she's twice been awarded New Zealand's premier Landscape Planning Award, and she's received the New Zealand Landscape Architect Planning Gold Award in 2008 for her evidence to the Environment Court. I think she really, to many of us, needs no introduction. Di Lucas, we look forward to what you're going to share with us today.
Thank you, Lynn. Been around a while. I think that the PowerPoint isn't going to work, and I'll just turn it off. I'll just working away. I did write a few rules down.
We can actually see some of it.
I think it would be hopeless. So, do I I need the mic?
Yes, yes.
Pardon? You're happy. Yeah, so am I. Well, it's lovely to be here. It's really lovely that there is the Women's Club. I think about Suffrage Day of 21 years ago, I think it was, when I was presented with a legal suffrage award, which I was really flattered to hear. I am very interested in past, looking to the past to look to the future. And people probably know that about me. And I see people here like Ruth, who got me to talk to Timu Girls High in about 1981. Careers for women. We can work with the land, and we can, I think it's really good, women working in landscape architecture, and it's wonderful, I've got a couple of colleagues here tonight, because women are more likely to be able to integrate a lot of different dimensions, social, physical, cultural. We're more likely to be able to work through the webs, the complexity. And so I hadn't planned to say any of that, but looking at the future of our city, I picked up this little thing that I made 12 years ago. I was asked to give a talk in Boston called Distant, Distinct Gondwana. Tauranga District Council asked me to go to Boston and give this talk. I've never worked for Tauranga District Council. That was very interesting brief. And I made this little thing. And, you know, New Zealand is so special in the world. And we can get a bit narrow in forgetting that. We can get a bit sort of closer in it. You know, we're enjoying globalisation. But we are so special, and we kind of need to be reminded now and again how special we are. And the Gondwana thing I found fascinating. I don't know if people have seen right here at Canterbury University, which is just right next door, there are fossils from Canterbury of things like ginkgo, things like Liriodendron, things like magnolia, fossils from Canterbury, from ancient times. Nowhere else in New Zealand have they got fossils quite like we have in Canterbury, the rocks of Canterbury, that show we were part of this great continent that had an incredible flora, and that we've had our own, we've been separated off for 80 million years and developed our own special flora. But we have these ancient connections, and I think it's really interesting. And I've always hoped, maybe we can recover what we do. Oh, Rachel. Have the Jurassic Park, have what was ancient Canterbury. And let's celebrate that, and perhaps we can create the odd dinosaur to populate it. But that we have recognised the flora that belonged here long ago, and then look at the biodiversity that has belonged here in more recent millennia and celebrate that coming through. And then integrate, knit in the layers of the cultures that have come and populated this place, so that we can integrate it all together into a new city, a rebuilt, recovering, revived city. So that's what I would hope. I like knitting, so maybe we could start knitting threads together. Maybe the Women's Club could get into knitting the different threads from our different pasts, and we could make a wonderful new future. So this city, the area there, when it was, I was told by Kaumātua, late 80s, I guess, about what it was like for Waitaha people, the earliest people we know of being here. Total peace people, gardening people. And they told me about this gardened land and what they harvested and how they gardened it. It was a managed place, and they considered all of Canterbury to be a gardened place. They told me how they even replanted tussocks and things. They were a gardening people for managing the land. And of course then there were other people came, and there were fires, and there was a lot of change. And there's also been natural change with floods, major floods. And so I've, for quite some time, been quite interested in the underlayers to the city, and people, I didn't bring anything other than this to show you, because I thought I had done my pictures. Don't worry. So you'll know that, a lot of you will know that in the mid-90s we were contracted by all the community boards to provide plant guides for what was the nature of each place. And we mapped Christchurch and we made plant lists so you could go to your street and find what it would be like naturally. So it was a Kikatea forest land or Akiaki woodland or what it was. It was the first time in the world I think it was done like that in a scale, and so it was pretty, it was really lovely to do it, and it was really lovely that the community boards contracted us from each board, and we did it all together. And then it won a lovely prize, and I loved it that the community board chairs came along and we celebrated together. And that guidance is still really valid, and it's interesting post-quake. What do people call it? You call it sort of PQ for pre-quake and AQ for after-quake. Everything now seems to be, you talk about pre-quake and after-quake. So AQ. I think there's more interest in the nature of the land because of the eruption of different character in different areas, so it showed the different sediments, so like Ryan in the central city, and there used to be streams through that were piped away 140 years ago, or put into pipes 140 years ago. Yet when we had the quake, the land erupted along those lines. In Manchester Street, Ryan, the land dropped outside a metre on the channel across the street. And it's the line of an early street. It's not the line of any pipe or anything today. It's purely the line of the levee to a natural stream that was there probably for a long time, but was removed over 100 years ago. And I found that fascinating, that the memory of the nature remains so strongly in the land. And I think there's been a lot of interest in that. And I know in our community, people wanted to have these streams that they could see the patterns everywhere. They wanted them to be retained. They wanted to keep the pattern, to mark those and have lanes and routes. Well, it's kind of not happening really. It's hard in private land, and I'm not sure how interested government authorities are in such things. So it's kind of sad, but we will retain the memory of them in our place, and perhaps we will gradually get some markers and some cues. And we probably have to get a bit sophisticated about how we do that. So being interested in the nature of the place is not new at all, and it wasn't just that 95 stuff we did, and a lot of people have been interested in the vegetation and so on. And back in 1897, the Christchurch Beautifying Association was formed, and they did massive native plantings. Now, people often think of the Christchurch Beautifying Association as more decorative, but it wasn't. Originally, it was very much into, it did some, plantings of annuals and floral things, but it also did massive native plantings along the Avon River between Manchester and Madras, right up to Kilmore Street. They completely planted it with hundreds of species, from giant trees to tiny herbs, and right into the water. Amazing, amazing. And I think that's a history that's kind of been forgotten, because later, like post-war, everybody was into, everything was sort of new, and not that I was around quite then, but when I see the history, that it was, everything had to be smart and prim and show you having a good work ethic. So well-tilled soil, straight rows of annuals, showed you did your seasonal work, and everything was, everybody had to be exemplary on their patch. But one really good thing about that era, I think, was that it was on display. People had these great gardens that were on display for all to enjoy. You could, the display to the street was important. And in subsequent times, and in the last decade, we've seen more and more of barricading, haven't we? And we're seeing walls, tight fences going up, so that people are being shut off, and that sections more and more become a little island rather than a visual part of a community. And I'm really sad about that, and all the walls and fences, the data shows that it doesn't help security, safety and stuff, it's, people get behind the fence and stuff, and that, using lighting and so on is much more efficient or better. And so I'm sad that we've had a big change in the way we address our streets, because they were what Christchurch and the Garden City was so proud of. The gardens, the private gardens displayed, but so many now are shut away. And I think that's a sad change. And of course we've got major changes with smaller and smaller sections and bigger houses, and so that there's less garden, certainly a huge contrast to this wonderful place. And so we're seeing increasingly a built city rather than a garden city in that way. And that's why what's important is that we do it well in terms of what space is available, and that we green things, and that we green the walls and we green the roofs, and we do all those things that people, a lot of people say they want to do, but very little of it is actually happening. And there's very little happening. Like in the rebuild, there's hardly a green roof going in. There's, I built in 1998, and it's, gone through the quakes and everything, but they're not happening because we've got a very conservative sort of, I don't know, it's conservative engineering or what it is, but things aren't happening. And that saddens me, because I think if we're going to have an exciting new garden city, it's not all about the public space, just as in the old one. Wasn't about the public space. It has to include the private lands, all the sections, all the home properties. And we've seen more and more apartment complexes, of course, which can be wonderful, but hopefully they'll be not only good courtyards and stuff, but also shared space, so that there'll be gardens that people can share, that will have beautiful gardens. And it's not, there's not a huge encouragement or activity supporting that at the moment in terms of rules and directions. But I think people want it, but it's hard to get the models locally for that. Christchurch the land of Christchurch, you know, the streams were exposed in the quays. But it is on a great arc of land at the base of the plains that is spring-fed. And you're right in it here where these springs emerge. And so we're a lovely, moist and lush land here. Whereas inland, you know, it's dry plains. But here it's lovely, lush land from these springs. But sadly, over the last century or so, the springs have been capped, and we're not really utilising them. We're not celebrating the nature of that. I love going to Redwood Spring. It's about the only one that I know around that is publicly accessible. It looks like a natural spring. It's just near the Styx overbridge, and it's fabulous. You see these particles bounce into this native fish. It's fantastic. But that's a rare thing in Christchurch. You see, there should be hundreds of them. It's a spring-fed land, but we don't have them. And in the quays they moved, the springs moved, and sadly they got capped again. And the council has no policy on springs, and we can do nothing. There's no database, there's nothing. So it's kind of sad. It's another missed opportunity, in my opinion. But I think a lot of the public would love it to happen. And it would be great if there could be some support and some guidance for what you could do with springs in your land, in your area. So that's an important one. And then the streams, and people know about since the later in the 90s, there was waterways and wetlands restoration, so all the streams that flowed from those springs most of them had been stuck into boarded up drains and pipes. But there was a brilliant team in the council at that time, and they did a costing to show that it would be more economic to restore, to naturalise the waterways than to keep managing pipes, timber things. It was a very clever way to do it. And they got a good budget from the council to then start on restoring. So there was some wonderful work done on waterway and wetland restoration. And that was a leader in New Zealand and nationally that work. But sadly it's kind of all stopped. So there's been, there's some good stuff and we've got some great opportunities. And let's hope people get a grip on what we can do. And people might have, we all know that Avon's been having a makeover through the central city. And question one or two aspects of that. Because we've always said, if you're going to do restoration, then try and really understand what it was like and try and restore. So if you're going to stick volcanic rock down a natural stream, then you don't call it restoration. It's something else, some other sort of garden. I think that we have a great opportunity. We've got a fantastic city and a great climate and good land to work with. And I'm not sure how it's best to move now to help people move forward where I think the public wants to go. Yes. I could have some. One interesting thing that I think the earthquakes were quite interesting that in the way they showed, nature was in total control. And there's another less sudden, not just 37 seconds, but taking some decades, of course, of sea level rise and climate change. And the whole thing of increased storm events, of sea level rise, which will affect Christchurch enormously, is something we need to be constructive and creative about now, rather than just getting frantic and trying to wall things out, which will be crazy. If we just try and put up seawalls is not the way to deal with it. So we need to get ahead of that and look at managing the detention and managing stormwater, slowing stormwater. I mean, the whole thing with everything increasing density and development and with no rules, no guidance on stormwater, everything's just going into a pipe and into the Avon or area and speeding up, causing more likely to have flooding. And so we can do these things. There's good techniques now, and the engineers are saying that put in stormwater cleansing systems and put in detention areas and all this stuff, not just on public land, but on private land. We can all be doing it, but there's no guidance, there's no encouragement, and we need to change that. And I think it's really important we get into there. The predictions of climate change, it's just getting closer and closer, more and more. So it's time we changed our way we manage. I am always fascinated looking at the maps of where the shoreline used to be. People looked 6,500 years ago, it wasn't far from right here. And then it moved back out to Brighton. It's been out there 1,000 years. But sea level moves. It's a dynamic. All these things change. The only certainty is change, and we need to get into it, working with that instead of pretending we can ignore it. In the Waimakariri area, it's a massive braided river. We think about the climate change and the storm events and what that might mean there in terms of that river, which naturally used to flow right down and flood around to Lake Ellesmere, to Waihora. So, we need to be creative and constructive and it's a great chance. It needn't be doom and gloom stuff. Let's, do it creatively, do it well, make it exciting and interesting instead of just carrying on same as. Sorry, I didn't get the pictures.
Got something to give you, Di.
Oh.
Before Lynette introduces Rachel, I just wanted to say thank you very much. I enjoyed your talk. As Di talked, I kept thinking, I understand what you're talking about. I haven't got the eyes to see the things that she knows about, the underground streams, and there must be people here in the audience like me who are very interested in that sort of thing, but I don't know how to change anything. And I haven't got the vast knowledge that Di's got. I remember 2 years ago, you might not remember this, Di, but she came and talked to the summer school that we were running for architectural students all over New Zealand. And I could just see them so impressed because on minute 1, you got down to business and showed them a map. And these were students mainly from Brisbane and some from Wellington, and they were very interested in Christchurch because of the quake. And Di got straight down to business and showed them the maps of the ancient streams.
What I could do is the PowerPoint images I was going to put on, because a lot of you will use the web, some of you might, but a lot of you will. I could put it on our website, the PowerPoint, and you can have a look.
Yeah, we would like to put it on the Canterbury Women's website.
That would be
as well.
better. That would be better
Yes,
still.
because Karina's over there doing a video of what you've done.
Yes. No, would you, if people would like, we can do that.
Yes.
I feel bad that, but it's not worth doing it. We can only see this for half a pie.
Are they bright in that thing?
Oh, yeah.
Too much light. It's too much. but first of all, we're going to have a response.
challenges.
Di, don't go away. Okay, we're asking Rachel Anand from the City Council Urban Design Team. Rachel grew up in Oamaru and then she went up to Kerikeri in the far north, so she's really a Kiwi. She understands us. But in 1998, she went out to do her landscape architecture out at Lincoln University, and now she's a registered architect. She tells me that recently she has spent a year greening the rubble and working in transitional gardens, a sister organisation to Gap Filler. But now she's quite heavily involved with the work that the urban design team are doing. And I personally, as a resident around here in the Arnhem Upper Riccarton area, we're hoping that we're going to have their help in getting a master plan like Sumner and Littleton have got. I'm just doing a little plug there for this neck of the woods. So Rachel, we look forward to what you've got to share with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynette. So when that September 4th earthquake hit, I had a 8-month-old baby boy, and he's now 5, and has a 3-year-old sister. And so a lot of how I see the garden city and its future is shaped as personal and professional, and coming back in this kind of context post-earthquake. Thank you. And I completely agree with some of the things Dialogues was saying, especially with the fences and things. A lot of what we're doing at work is looking at medium density developments, so the apartments that you see in the central city areas like St Albans, and making sure that the spaces and the developments work as well for people as they do for vehicles. That when you look at them, you don't see a row of garages, that they still have well-defined pedestrian entrances and gardens, and that they are pleasant and good spaces, and they don't become ghettos in a few years' time because it's just about where people park their cars. So this is how I see the garden city. So I wanted to look at this going from a broad scale, through to a more local perspective, and I guess a similar challenge to looking at people's own gardens. Sorry, can you hear me better? That's all right. So some of the key feedback from the sharing idea and the public consultation was that people wanted to see more green space in the city. And when you go through to the large broad-scale public spaces, and I acknowledge what Di's saying with restoration and the way the Avon River may have been approached, but as a project, and the first anchor project of the MARC, this reflected this priority to put green space in the city and reflect the garden city. And also that equally that things will stop in response to how people question with Victoria Park, how much should things change and how much should things reflect what they have been and what's been familiar. So my understanding, is that that's been delayed, the development of Victoria Park, and some of the next things coming through is more opportunity for consultation and discussion on what that might look like and how that balance might be. Yeah. So with the public spaces, and I think one of the new things coming through is seeing purposeful gardens and starting to address in some of the public spaces the stormwater and some of these things. So with the Accessible City projects, and you can see it with the Botanic Gardens Visitor Centre, we've now got rain gardens for stormwater treatment coming through in some of the public spaces, which is really important and really valuable to start to deal with some of the processes and the function, and not just the amenity of these spaces. And on the right, they've got Wynyard Quarter in Auckland, where they're developing some really lush spaces and also fulfilling that role. I wanted to talk to you about, and this is just going through some of the levels and where that Di was alluding to, is gardening and social engagement. So one of the things I did coming back from maternity leave was to spend a year with Brennan Rubble as their project coordinator. And what I found was that people coming into the city and being involved in these temporary projects, the value wasn't just in the end result. The value was that in coming to volunteer, there was a really positive process for people, and that getting your hands back in the dirt was quite a healing and restorative way for people to re-engage with the central city, and that was really valuable in itself. So I really encourage anybody, if they haven't been back into town that much especially, and there's these opportunities to go and engage with these things, that it's really quite, it's really beneficial in itself to be part of. And then one of the things that comes through too is that resilient communities are where people are well connected. And the things that have come out, one of the things that's come out post earthquakes, and I understand it's come through some of the, is the Food Resilience Network, and looking at the opportunity, I guess, in going further to amenity, to have things in public spaces such as orchards, and the value and the role of community gardens, and the way that people can be more connected in the community through gardening. And it's all at a different scale. And then you've got the Garden 2.0 and the growth of the food crops and things like this that have really helped people to become better connected and local supply of food, and they're bringing the agriculture, reducing the food miles, bringing things back into the city, which is really positive. So this is a little thing. This is an example of all the things that go together to make this, the ways in which a community can become more connected through farmers market, through the, community ownership, the harbour co-op and the store, things, and you've got the gardening in schools and in different ways, and it's, the garden is a vehicle for this engagement and involvement in a community. So this was a challenge, similar to what Di's talked about, is the garden at your place and the height of your front fence. And it is that issue of how it feels, I guess, comparatively, to walk along the street where there are solid 1.8 metre fences, and how that doesn't really feel as much as a community. And also where people live on this section, and which way you live, do you live out to the back? Do you live to the front? We have a front yard, and the kids are, they play out the front, and they know all the elderly ladies on the street and their dogs, and they call out to them and they chat. And my son plays with his water gun out the front and shoots across the road, and the boy across the road shoots his back, and occasionally they get a cyclist, which isn't so good. But, this is the opportunity for that interaction, the incidental way that you can be least isolated because of your garden. So there's all the levels from the broad scale through the local and your own place, in which it's quite clear that there is value in the garden.
Thanks, Rachel, on behalf of the Women's Council, to accept that. And we should leave this place at 7, but there is some time for questions. So, Di, would you like to come with Rachel? I think there were 2 questions before.
Just you said that the Beautifying Society funded a lot of banks and neighbours. I wonder what had happened to them.
There's still some there.
Just repeat that question.
The riverbanks being planted by the Beautifying Association. Some of those plantings, I think, are still there. And then they planted, they planted the poplars along, they still survived between Madras and Manchester, the Poplar Avenue, and I think some of that planting might have been for shelter for their native plantings. There's still scattered. There was a big old ribbon wood there, and a few old things still there. Yeah. It's fascinating they did it. I've got the minutes, if anyone wants to know, I've got the minutes from 1897 Beautifying Association. aging. Yeah.
Rachel, what about the springs?
Firstly, I don't have an answer. It's I've been busy looking at apartment blocks for since June last year. So it's yes, I'd hate to pass it on for the sake of it, but it isn't something I've been looking at. So I'm looking at the social aspects of things.
Is anybody looking at it?
I could get some answers for you on that. I can give you my card and we can find out what's happening.
We
Would you
can
like
put
to?
it up on the website as well.
I'd like to know what you think about education. How do we get educated in what you're talking about? Where do we start? TV?
There's different ways. One of the little things we've done in our central city, Canterbury village, is we've built a little landing on the street, and it takes out 2 car parks, so it's about the same size as 4 of these tiles, and it's about looking at the street differently, that it's a people place instead of just for cars. And so there's a message in there, and the theme of how we've furnished it is about that it's a watery place. And so we hung tyres around like you do on a wharf, and we rowed a boat up the Avon and parked it on the landing, and we and kids in the local little school painted ducks and eels and wrote stories about ducks and eels, and we painted a shoal with whitebait on the paving, and it's about trying to understand and getting kids involved to make the stories. And my dear mother-in-law is here, and she heard some of the stories, the eel stories. They were wonderful, and some kids who teachers said they would not normally say boo to a goose got up, stood up in the boat and read their stories, out on the street. So pretty cool. So I think there's different ways of getting kids to learn. These are just 8-year-olds, but that can be a great age to get people involved. So I think, and I think getting the kids involved helps the parents to learn. There's just multiple ways. And those guides we did back in '95, the sheets, council printed off a whole lot for Ellerslie, and I've got that bundle still. And we must take them to the lovely new Botanic Gardens Information Centre and make them available so that people, not necessarily everybody knows they're on the web, people can pick up and learn what is the nature of the place. There's a lot of people who haven't a clue what is natural to here. So it has to come from multiple ways. Yes, I challenge it.
Oh yes, I know. So do I. I just want to
Right.
what
My understanding of the Eden project, or Christchurch, is they want to do a mountains to sea construction. They were talking about the Avon Loop at one point, but now they're saying that's not big enough. To me, in Canterbury, and very accessible place that it is, we have a mountains to sea there. We do not need to create it in the central city or in the city at all. What I would like to see is an interpretation, a celebration, an understanding of spring-fed freshwater systems meeting saline systems. Look, the saline is coming kilometres further up the Avon. Saline waters we have, and we have wonderful groundwater, wonderful things. Getting an interpretation, getting fun things, whether it's from splash pads like springs or, doing fun things with our to understand our waters better and the nature of Christchurch better. I don't think we need to create mountains down to here.
Because I wondered if he changed his mind about the mountain part. What did I read that was really about?
Oh, good. Hold on. Oh, good.
I don't know. I just think he's someone to keep an eye on. Never know do you with it.
That's good news.
Yeah, my question is, prior to the earthquakes, City Council had started getting into living streets, where they were trying to actually, put in plantings, put in chicanes, slowing down the traffic. But that seemed, of course, since post-earthquakes, it doesn't appear to be happening. Is there a plan to go back to that? Because that was one way of creating communities in the smaller areas.
In some of the subdivisions, we are encouraging that more narrow streets do have, they slow the traffic, that they've got pedestrian priority and things like that. But I think some of the problem is that there's still the focus on trying to rebuild damaged infrastructure and a whole lot of things. I know that that takes away from some of the park maintenance and development. There's only so many reserves that they can afford to take on when still repairing a lot of damaged things.
Can I give you a good news one? In our patch, because we looked after our landing, built and looked after it so well, this size, council was now delegated to our community group to upgrade, to do transitional works for Colombo Street from the river up to Salisbury Street. And so we've got young designers working on the plans at the moment. It's a tiny budget, and we're meeting with all the landowners along the street that are busy rebuilding, and we're doing works in the street, so we're doing it together. I think it's quite exciting really. I think it's the first time the council's actually delegated for something like this. So watch this space.
Two last questions, one.
About the grey water. So the press yesterday or the day before about the German regulations for water. I think their water gets treated. You get metered full of water that runs off the property into the street, and you've got to have surfaces that not concrete. We should enter in those.
Yeah, that's right. Well, the places in the world that are doing green roofs, places like Basel and various cities where you have to dispose of your own stormwater. That wasn't grey water, it was stormwater. So that they encourage people to have gardens, and even great big apartment buildings that have green roofs, and all the water is used on site. It's fantastic, but we don't have any incentives like that. I had 2 Canterbury students research why green roofs weren't happening in Christchurch in the rebuild, and they found that it's because there's no sort of incentives like that, and nor is there much expertise here, sadly.
I was just going to say about green roofs. Green and Rural has a demonstration garden on green roofs, which is on the corner of Canterbury Square and Chester Street. And you're able to use some of the native plants and things for those as well, which makes them, I guess, doubly valuable. And Landcare Research has some technical information. So if you go fishing, you can find some of these things, but that's definitely worth looking at. And the purpose of the Green and Rural Garden was so that people could see it, and they're low, so you see over them. And there's one that's kind of a garden shed scale, so there that you can see, you look down over the plants.
Which streets were they, these streets?
Cranmer Square and Chester Street. So that is Montreal Street side.
On the Cathedral Grammar side.
No, the other side, the
Yeah.
east side.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just interested in what you were saying about the springs, and I remember the lovely work you did at the end of Salisbury Street.
Yeah.
I've just come from nearly 9 years living in Wellington, and there's a wonderful model of how a spring is used communally for Tony. I don't know if anybody's been there. It's a wonderful sculpture, very much connected with the tangata whenua there, and there's lots of public taps, and if you go there any time of the day, there are always people with containers filling them up with this beautiful water, and it's a really communal space, and it's been made really accessible for people. And I was thinking, oh, that would be great to do in Christchurch.
Yeah.
But I also think that 90% will have the most revolting tap water.
Yeah.
That is much more of an incentive to grow out containers. Whereas we have that water coming out of our taps. But that communal, it's very old-fashioned, but everybody gathers around and they wait while everybody fills up their containers and has a chat. It's just
Gary Moore wanted to do that in the square that he was near. Yeah. And after the quake, AQ, I got a call from a gentleman who said he'd worked in the square in 1937, I think it was, and he said that his first task each morning was to go to take his boss's silver water bottle, I didn't know there were such things, silver water bottle, and take it next door into the basement of the Dalgety building and fill it from the rushing spring water in that building. And I thought, wow, if only we had that now. It was so cold he ran and said that. Yeah.
But didn't the Theatre Royal have a little creek running through the dressing rooms?
Quite a lot of, and under Valentine's is a flow, a lot of places through the centre city. It is a rich spring-fed land and time to reveal.
So why can't we? Why aren't we being listened to?
Timid engineers, I think. Let's try and find some, some robust ones. I think, because it's crazy not to do that. On my PowerPoint, there's one little cartoon. I've got one, you'll see a hand drawing, and if you click on it, it's got a little cartoon of the options. Yeah, Ruth, I quite agree. It's something this organisation could try and take on.
Nobody listening to you, Di.
Well, we've got the city plan under review. There is no policy. What about a submission? Even, because it's got to have if it's got something to substantiate in the plan, it helps people listen. Yes?
I'd just like to make a suggestion. The Canterbury Water Management Strategy has a zone committee for the Christchurch Wisconsin area. They are listened to by Environment Canterbury and by CCC. Should someone could go and make a presentation to them and get that on the agenda through that mechanism.
Good idea, yeah.
Well, Di, I think. Sorry about that, people, because we could ask them both lots more questions, but Julia is expecting us to be out by 7 o'clock. So I'll just wrap it up by saying thank you everybody for coming to the first event for the Canterbury Women's Club for this year. Lynette, have you got something to finish off with?
I think that Beverly probably told you about the next event, which is on for International Women's Day, March 9th, Monday. The Canterbury Women's Club and the United Nations Association are coming together to co-host breakfast for Canterbury women researchers, and we're very lucky to have an international speaker who happens to live here, Professor Christine Winterbourne from the medical school. And really we've been very fortunate having her, and so that will be the next event, but I can't tell you just right now where that's going to be, because we had hoped it was going to be at the St Asaph Street kitchen, but unfortunately you all read in the paper about how that's been forced to close down, or it has closed down, and so that's a real loss. So we're not sure yet just where we're going to have that breakfast, but we are going to have it on March 9th, 7:15 till 9:30 with Professor Christine Winterbourne from the medical school, and she will be talking about dealing with life stresses, the role of antioxidants. So it's going to be a date to put in your diaries, and we look forward to seeing you then. Is there anything else, Karina, that you would like to say? All right, thank you very much for coming.